So we were just talking about, you know, all the things, the physical things that we've tried and try to remedy pain or discomfort in some way. And what we're exploring in these sessions is perhaps the emotional pain that led to the further concretization into physical pain. And the more that's investigated, the more it makes total sense. And in these investigations of the emotional pain that is somehow invited to be in the presence of the moment, not limited to a body or a body part, but to allow that emotional energy that so often is embedded in the belief system. I'm not saying they're wrong, but like books like The Body Keeps the Score and the, oh, what are some other things about body?
Somatic emotional release,
Yeah,
um,
the emotional
body, yeah, yeah.
exactly. All the body centered practices. It's almost like I'm investigating if those are working at the wrong level. Um, because in my experience, and I know you know this, but it bears repeating, the I realize feeling fat. And Eckhart Tolle talks about this, the pain body, that the pain body was actually bigger than the physical body. And because my mind didn't know about emotional bodies or how to feel or how anything, all I knew was this body is me and this pain is in the body. And so, with that belief that in my experience causes things to take shape, and let me give an example of that. Um, in this moment, just let the eyes close. And we're going to notice what happens when we name something and assign it to a shape. Now, notice with eyes closed, there's not even the visual part of the body evident in this moment. It's disappeared with everything else in the moment. And now there's the dark space. Seeing is still happening, and sensation is happening to some degree or another. And is it possible to notice that when eyes are closed, if there's no thought about the sensation, does it actually have a shape? It may have a density to it. It may have different seeming locations to it, um, almost like a cloud or clouds. And some clouds have more density in some places than other places. So if we could just view it as kind of a cloud with varying degrees of intensity. If I say, and notice the what I'm doing, which is I'm going to name something, and then it's going to take shape in a location as a separate object and as a body part that is at one point in time we learned the shape of. And so I like you to watch the energy conforming to make that body part come into existence when perhaps a moment ago it wasn't. So in this moment, can you bring to attention your left foot. Do you see? By the naming of it, we create a shape of a foot, and then part of the cloud takes shape, and a foot comes into existence as sensation and perhaps subtle image on the mind's eye. And notice perhaps it came into existence when it wasn't even noticed before. And let's do that again. The back of the neck. Really pay attention to how that happens. We hardly ever slow it down enough to investigate. But notice there might be a picture or at least a memory of the shape of that body part and the naming of it. And then the cloud takes shape and that body part comes into existence by the naming of it. But with eyes closed, notice it's a mental image that forms. And if there's no mental image, there's a subtle memory of it. So the naming, the word, the meaning attaches to an image, whether you're aware of it or not. And sensation takes that shape. This is how body identification happens. Let's try a couple of others. So eyes are still closed. And we're investigating how these things come into being. Notice perhaps if there is something that falls on your right big toe, boy, that right big toe takes shape. And then it takes all the attention right there, right there, right there. And then one day, without even noticing, when it stops hurting, whoop, it disappears. So pain beckons attention. And when we call it pain, when we give it a name and we say, pain in my chest, lo and behold, the naming, chest, and pain, and either a memory or a subtle image with eyes closed. Now, because we've imagined the container, chest, the discomfort is no longer experienced in the whole moment. We have, by naming it and locating it, given it a shape that unless we learn to relax attention, it stays there. Now, we'll do one more example. I had somebody come in just a tad late, and I want to really give everybody the opportunity to explore this. Watching how things, seeming things, body parts, come into existence by the naming of them and the assignment of a location and a shape. So allow the eyes to close. I'm going to give something a name, which is a meaning. And when we learned it, we learned the location of it. And we learned the shape of it. We learned to cut out the shape from the rest of the visual moment. and making an independent object, making it seem independent because of this method of construction. So, in this moment, bring into your awareness your two hands. Notice how the energy takes shape and perhaps wasn't even noticed before, but all of a sudden the naming of them caused the sensation to take the shape of the mental image we learned as hand. There it is. Now, with eyes closed, if there's any pictures on the mind's eye, just stare at those images and they'll disappear. And when there's just darkness that you're seeing with eyes closed, allow yourself to investigate this sensation we called two of something that was called hands. And really look there. Is it really two separate objects if it has no image attached to it? Can you say that sensation has an edge of any kind that's separating one thing from another? Even if hands are apart, see if there's an edge or if there is just a little bit varying densities floating go from one area of density to another, noticing how freely the seeing can go from any sensation to another. Do you cross a boundary? Is there really anything there but sensation? And then just open to see if any other sensations are present. And keep opening. And pretty soon you might hit something called a skin line. Is that any different? If we say body, what takes shape? Body, me, torso, arms, legs, face, eyes. Allow the eyes to close again and notice even this outline is subtly made in the same manner by the names, the locations, the memories of a shape. Is it with eyes closed? This outline of body, is it any different? Or is it too part of the single cloud of sensation floating without edges in the space of now. When you look without names, without image, what starts to happen? What if these imagined boundaries can just be felt? What happens to them when we stop naming, when we stop locating? Actually, we don't do that. Thinking does that. When an image creates a boundary, when a name gives a shape like a sculptor to the body. But what happens in the absence of names? Allow the eyes to open again. And I want you to notice, if you can, that the whole moment really has no edges visually. If you relax the way that you're looking and to include everything that can be seen in this moment, and you keep going to the periphery, is there really an edge? If you look at what we normally perceive as an independent object, can we look at it in the absence of a name? And notice, wow, that's a shape and a color. And on either side of that seemingly independent object, there's more shapes and colors. There's more, like the whole moment. If you relax the way you're paying attention and see the whole thing, the whole moment, like a snow globe. Are there any edges really between one shape and color and the next shape and color? Or does it flow from one to the other to the other seamlessly? See, there's a mechanism that comes together and cuts things into pieces and names them. This is called perception. Energy takes the shape. Vibration takes the shape. Now, is it possible to notice, still with this wide angle view, the feeling, the felt sense, the vibration, the sensation, whatever you'd like to call it? And then, is it possible to examine the cloud of vibration, of sensation, just like we're doing the shapes and colors in the absence of shape? Just like we did with the eyes closed, it might help to close the eyes. Notice the vibration has no shape in the absence of the naming, in the absence of the container. There might be a memory, but just be really, really super watchful of that. And if things are taking shape, guaranteed, that's what's happening. noticing there's no actual edges to a cloud. It's just kind of particles of vapor, if in different densities. And see if, when eyes open again, now you can experience sensation as a field. No edges. And just let the cloud lose its shape into the field. What happens? You might hear the sound of a thought naming. Identifying. Cutting out body parts. Giving them shape. But in the absence of the ability to cut things into pieces, what happens? What happens when you see the field as one image called now, called here, called this, without a then, without a there, without a that, just one hanging image, no edges, all edges perceived. This visual moment, one field. We can do the same thing with listening. The sounds scattered, the voice of a thought, the voice arising vividly, any other sounds in the environment. So often, perception builds an imaginary wall. My thoughts, my thinking, private thoughts. Inside, outside. But when you look or listen wide open, is it not so simple to hear all sounds are happening in the soundscape of now? There's no inside, outside, unless the body takes shape. As me, body, person, ears. All of that happening in the inside, which has no outside. And then, is it possible to notice that this body in the sensory field is made of contraction, a seeming outline, a seeming container. But wait, there is no inside outside. We've proven it. We can see it. We can hear it. Can we borrow that knowing and know there is a sensory field? There is no inside outside, just inside. Can we invite containers made of the naming, made of beliefs, thinking, perception? Can we just let those things lift off and be in the bigger here, in the bigger outside, inside? The bigger inside that has no outside. No location except here. We may feel a center, but is that not contained? That personal center made of sensation, of names, of location, of perception. What happens when we dare to explore the edges? When we give up the belief that I am in a container that's smaller than this moment. What happens when I question the belief? Was it ever an arm? Was it ever a back, really? Was this body ever a container for perceiving? If we can't see it as separate from this visual landscape of shapes and colors, if we can't hear it as separate, but we can hear the sound of a voice of thought arising along with all the other sounds, if that's not separate, what is keeping everything together? But the felt sense, the identification with object. What happens when we question our fundamental identity in this way? How can it be separate? How is it made? Made of perception. And what is it like when we open attention and see there is one visual moment and what we call body is in it? What thought calls body is in it. Thought says it's separate, it's a person, it's me, it's a body. But when you look at this now moment, is not that separation part of what's here? Impossible, impossible. Hear all sounds. And you really see, wait a minute, the sound of this thought and the sound of this voice and the sound of the garbage truck and the sound of the silence are all happening. There is no inside outside. And then the sensation, the vibration, the felt sense. Does it make sense? That that's the only thing that's separate? We challenge the edges in the visual field. We challenge the edges in the auditory field, and it's so easy to see. It's so simple to hear. Can we dare to question sensation, vibration, and say, it can't be separate? And then we relax. And anything that feels like it has a shape or a name, we know it can't be. It can't be. And what happens when we drop into that vibratory field and challenge the belief in edges? The belief in containers. What if we let them lose shape? By simply extracting the belief from them. And say, you're free. Free. Not contained. Just experimenting again and again, and again and again. Wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse. And when body identification is super strong, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to say, I'm not going to seek a remedy for a physical body out in the world. It's futile. I'm not going to seek beyond this moment to find safety, to find love, to find appreciation. And the deepest prayer is, if that starts happening, to stop, full stop in the visual field, in the auditory field, in the sensory field. Fully allowing body identification to dissolve, to be free. May not go free, but at least you see the container is now not a skin line.